It's me, the D-O-double-G. Welcome to the Eden Army Podcast with your host tonight, Pete Robert Tucci.
Welcome, Eden Army. I hope you guys had a good 4th of July. Snoop is right. My name is Pete Robert Tucci, and this is the Eden Army Podcast. So good to see you guys. Tonight we're going to go over the debacle that is the Democratic Party. And we're also going to begin a series on the aftermath of an EMP attack. And I'll tell you why I decided to dive into that in this learning series. And if you're not familiar with the Congressional EMP report, please make yourself familiar with that. You can find it on the government websites. Just Google Congressional EMP report. But first, let's see who is in the house tonight. Looks like Jeff made it. Terry, of course, always. Let me get this one here up real quick so we can see what's going on in chat real quick. There we go. Looks like Mama Teresa. Guy, of course. Christy's in the house. Baby girl's in the house. Russ is in the background as usual, clicking buttons and making everything work. Rev made it on time, and Corey's here. Good job, guys. I'm sure Mama Tooch is somewhere clicking and clacking. So good. That looks like what we have going on over here on Kick. Chris is in the house. Guys, if you're not on Kick, I recommend you move over to there if you're on YouTube or on any of the other platforms, because we will eventually roll over to Kick. So come hang out with all the cool kids. Chris, how's mom doing? Is mom in the house? Opie is actually on time. Thank you, Ope. I appreciate that. About time you did something with your life. See, make sure I didn't miss anybody on Kick. And I think Jim's over on YouTube, probably, if I had to guess. So shout out, type something if you're on any of the other platforms. But all the cool kids are hanging out over at kick.com. So come see us. So we have a pretty good show. Meta's in the house. We are going to go over the EMP congressional report, and we're not so much going into that, but we're going to concentrate on the initial aftermath of an EMP attack on the United States, what the repercussions of that would be, and to see if we're really prepared for it. But we're going to go on to the news right after this message. Guys, we still have a number of spots available for that Troy's Gate experience. And again, if you can't afford to do both days, both the basic pistol portion of it on day one and then the Troy's Gate experience on day two, lock in your money, your deposit, because that'll at least get you into Troy's Gate. So that's the experience you really want to have, especially if you're an experienced shooter to begin with. Basically, the first day is just me going over firearm basics with you. So lock that in. But let's get into the news real quick. Boy, what a rough week for the Biden camp, huh? 20 key Democrats in total have been vocal on the media, asking the president to step aside from his campaign. Several A-list celebrities jumped on the bandwagon, including, I know you guys heard of it, George Clooney, Stephen King, Rob Reiner, Abigail Disney, and even his pundit, Jon Stewart, who now accuse Biden of becoming Trumpian by refusing to back out of the race. But the Democrats don't care about them. They don't care about them, not any more than they care about us. What they care about are the donors that are fleeing. For example, Mark Pincus, whose net worth is $1.4 billion, is pulling his funds out. Christy Walton, known for being married to one of the sons of Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, you guys might have heard of that. She's pulling her funds. She's pulling the pin. Investor Michael Novogratz decided to hedge his bets on another candidate. And Reed Hastings, co-founder of Netflix, is flying the coop on the Biden campaign run. So 2 questions I have for these people. Where were you 3 years ago, and how do we not see this? How did you not see it? Because I know the rest of the general public certainly saw the decline of Joe Biden, although the Democrats seem to want to hide it from us. And the other question is if he's not fit to run a campaign, how in the world is he fit to run the country right now? If you're that strong against him not being fit, invoke Article 25 right now, today. But why don't they want to do that? Because they put a vice president in that office because of who she is, not because of how smart she is. They're scared to death. But what are their other options? Kamala Harris, who had one job and she failed. Her one job in this administration was to be the czar of the southern border. And she failed horribly at that. Her polling numbers are barely better than Biden's. However, the only way they can keep their campaign funds that they've already accumulated from these donors is if they run her. If they bring in any other candidate, those funds, like Pretty Boy Newsom, if they run him, he's going to have to start out with a fresh bank account without much time left in the election to fill up those Democratic war coffers. Russ, run clip 1.
Democratic calls for President Biden to drop out of the race stretch from Capitol Hill to Hollywood tonight. Good evening, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. The word blockbuster is normally used to describe a box office hit, but today, one of the biggest movie stars, George Clooney, dropped a political blockbuster in the form of a New York Times editorial, writing, though, that even though he is a lifelong Democrat and loves Joe Biden, quote, our party leaders need to stop telling us that 51 million people didn't see what we just saw, referring to the debate. And those party leaders are now under pressure from their own members to deliver a message to the president. All of this is clouding the NATO summit of world leaders right here in Washington, where the big news is that the first F-16 fighter jets are on their way to Ukraine to fend off Russian forces. We have team coverage tonight. CBS's Ed O'Keefe is at the White House, and we begin with CBS's Scott MacFarlane on Capitol Hill.
The political ground is wobbling beneath President Biden, one of the biggest tremors from one of America's biggest stars. Weeks after appearing side by side at a fundraiser, actor George Clooney split with the president. Writing in a blistering editorial for the New York Times, I love Joe Biden, but we need a new nominee. Adding, when he saw the president 3 weeks ago, he wasn't even the Joe Biden of 2020. He was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Another quake on cable TV this morning.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants a decision, but President Biden has already made his stance clear.
I'm staying in the race.
But speaking later with reporters, she declined to press harder.
The decision is the president's.
At the NATO summit in Washington, the president, posing with top European leaders, was asked about the comments from Pelosi, his longtime ally.
Is Nancy Pelosi still behind you, sir?
But at nearly the same time, another U.S. House Democrat, New York's Pat Ryan, today publicly urged the president to end his campaign. CBS News has learned House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, who's been hearing complaints from many in his caucus, says he'll share those concerns with the president himself by Friday. Democrats who've already defected wouldn't say if or how many others are poised to join.
Has anybody joined you or expressed interest in joining you in your call for the president to withdraw?
I don't have anything to say about this.
CBS News has confirmed Senate Democrats have scheduled a closed-door meeting with the president's campaign team tomorrow.
I think that we could lose the whole thing, and it's staggering to me.
after Michael Bennet of Colorado became the first Democratic senator to publicly predict the president could lose in a landslide. Two senior Democrats tell CBS News the Biden campaign could face financial problems. With concerns about the president's health and wavering Democratic support, campaign donations could dry up in a race that could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Nora.
Scott McFarland, thank you so much for your reporting.
Wow. So there you go. The tides are turning. The Democratic Party is in turmoil right now. A lot of good questions right now in Kick Chat. You know, Melissa asked, you know, why didn't George Clooney come in a little bit sooner? Why didn't he talk about? Because, okay, it was so obvious now that this guy in front of millions upon millions upon millions of people during the debate, but it is in decline. But none of that matters. What matters and why they're coming forward now, because they don't care about the country. All they care about is those poll numbers. They see what's happening in the polls, and they want to maintain power. It has nothing to do with the American people, has nothing to do with democracy, has nothing to do with anything other than the Democrats trying to hold on to power. So that's why they didn't come forward any sooner. So, but let me get off of that before. No, let's talk about the Biden administration a little more, because there's other news about these guys. The Biden administration is so frustrated. Let's pop this one up. The Biden administration is so frustrated with the recent Supreme Court ruling that some are calling for a criminal investigation against the Supreme Court. You heard that right. Senators are requesting that Merrick Garland appoint a special counsel to investigate possible violations in federal ethics and tax laws by Clarence Thomas. This is another example. This is what we've been warning you about. This is what Russia does. This is another example of how this administration is turning the DOJ loose on its political opponent. So let this sink in. The Democrats think that Donald Trump is such a threat to democracy that they're willing to destroy democracy just to prove it. So let that sink in for a little bit, because that's what they've been doing, and that's what they're going to continue to do, all to maintain power, right? And guys, if you have any questions about the news and stuff like that, remember #Russ, and we'll try to pin those up for you. And we'll notice it, but we will have a Q&A here in a little bit. So, in other news, the war in Israel. So that's hit a bit of a lull. We're not hearing much about that on the news. But special operators are still hunting down Hamas terrorists. I was on the phone with a couple of friends of mine who are reservists. One of them told me that they've been told to go home, spend some time with your families, and prepare for another ground offensive. Now, both of the people I've talked to stopped short of telling me whether that ground offensive was going to be in Gaza or if the Israelis are planning on expanding the war to secure their northern border against Hezbollah. That is what I believe is the most likely scenario, because our administration has given them grief about spending so much time in Gaza and humanitarian aid being a problem, that I think it's time now that they're going to shift. The Israelis are going to shift to the northern border and take care of that terrorist threat up there that is Hezbollah. But speaking of Gaza, and speaking of humanitarian aid, we spoke a few times in the past few weeks about that U.S. taxpayer-paid pier that was erected in Gaza for humanitarian aid. Now, us taxpayers, we paid $32 million for this pier. Well, that pier now is shut down. It's 42 days of operations, cost the taxpayers $7.6 million a day. And it did not deliver near the aid that they thought it was going to deliver. As a matter of fact, the aid that was delivered on the pier is now standing on a dock under UN control and is yet to be dispersed, rotten on a dock. So, another epic failure by the Biden administration. But look, I don't want to waste any more time. That's all the time I'm willing to spend on news. But we are going to dive in to the new series of what we intended for this podcast to be about, and that's learning about preparedness and learning about scenarios that we can get ready for, especially unlikely scenarios. And, well, I say unlikely, but look, there's a congressional report on EMPs. Okay. But what really turned me on to this week, and I'm gonna mention this over on Kick. But first, let's pay some bills, Russ. And well, let's not do that. Let's stop. Let's open the floor up for any questions before we go on to intermission. So Russ, jump on in here if you've got any questions. Sorry about that.
No worries. I got one. I'm trying to get it typed in now. There we go. And is from the Rev. He wants to know, was the aid waiting to be unloaded?
It was unloaded on the dock. Now remember, when that dock first went up, they started bringing aid in. There was a storm, destroyed half the dock. We repaired it at our cost. Some aid came in, and there's video now of that aid standing on next to the pier there, yet to be distributed. So it's rotten in the sun, and the UN has yet to distribute it, which is what Israel has said all along. We have the capacity at the borders for you guys to bring in aid, but two things are happening. You weren't sending enough aid. These Arab countries weren't sending enough aid. We weren't sending enough aid through the normal procedure, through the normal checkpoints. And the UN was not able to distribute it. And the aid that was making it in, guess who took it? Hamas. So there you go.
And Russ had Finch had a follow-up question on that. None of this stuff's coming in. Is able to come in on ships anymore?
No, they've dismantled that pier, so there's no longer any U.S. aid coming in through ships. That pier cost us $320 million is being dismantled as we speak.
Yeah.
So epic waste.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bullshite, talking about the election. He says it's a ruse to get voters not to show up during the election. It looks like a landslide win, so people might not show up. I'll have to agree with him on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, we got to get out there, guys, and vote. There is no question about it. Don't sleep on this. We definitely got to get out. And Agnes did mention they had the SAVE Act, which is Save the Voting Rights of that went through Senate and then ended up dying at the House. And that was basically, look, you had to prove, the SAVE Act was basically you had to prove that you were an American citizen in order to vote in this upcoming election. Now, anybody that doesn't agree with that is a friggin' traitor. Period. End. If anybody, now they're going to say it makes it harder for minorities to vote. No, they need all this information when they go for their benefits, right? They're not just going to hand out benefits unless you're an illegal immigrant. Then they'll just give you the benefits when you walk over the border. But you need to show some type of proof of identification to get these food stamps, to get these other benefits. You telling me you can't do that to vote?
Yeah, I know, right?
When you're voting in person, we're not even talking about mail-in votes. We're not even talking about that. Okay, well, you just have to sign the affidavit saying that you're an American citizen to mail-in vote.
Yeah. And Biden's already said that even if it made it to his desk, he was going to veto it. And Christie, go ahead.
Go no. It's just it baffles me that anybody could think that this was okay. That even that people would look at Democrats and that are opposed to this bill and say, oh, they're just looking out for the best interest of minorities. No, it's not the case. They're looking out for the best interest of them staying in power. And the fact that they've let in all these illegal immigrants, and now some states are not even asking for citizenship to vote, New York, California, then it doesn't make any sense to me. What was Christie asking?
Christie had a comment in regards to Biden and stepping down. He's admitted to the world he can't handle the schedule of the president or campaigning. I mean, but Jill wants him to stay in. We all know that's the case.
Well, and there's a couple of reasons. And how are they going to get him out? And they very well may get him out. Problem is, and like I said in the monologue, they picked a vice president who wasn't able to succeed him.
Exactly.
And they picked her for a specific reason, because she's a minority and because she's a woman. Exactly. And you're telling me there wasn't even if they were going to use that criteria, that there wasn't a smarter one out there?
I know, right?
That was the smartest one that they could find? give me a
Maybe she got the
freaking
VP
break.
the way she got her first appointment. Who knows?
Oh, exactly. The pier was only in operation for 21 days, 20 days, right around there. So it was a big waste. And that whole pier went up just to satisfy that radical left group in the Biden administration, the AOCs, the Tlaibs, the other knucklehead. I don't even want to think about her, but
Ilhan Omar.
yes, that's the one from over here in Minnesota. And not to mention, and here's where the cascade effect now is happening, because now they've got Biden in front of NATO speaking, who, by the way, called Zelensky Putin, who introduced Zelensky as Vladimir Putin, and had to backtrack on that. And somebody had mentioned it in chat earlier, and even called Trump his vice president.
Exactly.
So no matter what they do, no matter how many teleprompters they put in front of this guy, they can't hide the fact that they've been hiding what's been going on with him for the past 3 years, that he is in a severe state of mental decline, and he's not running our country. There's no other way around it. There's no other way to say it, guys.
And I read something on Twitter just the other day that from since the first debate, they were saying, no, he doesn't need to see a doctor. He doesn't need to see anybody. But obviously he saw one in January. And
they're talking about not only in January, but they're talking about a mental health specialist that was coming to the White House 8 times within 1 month. But they are not saying that it was because he has any type of deficits or any type of mental decline happening.
No, of course not.
No, I mean, come on. And Melissa, you hit it right ahead, where all these people now, like the George Clooney's of the world, they all knew this. They all knew it. And now they're just now, because it's hip to come out and say this guy needs to change. We need to change this guy, all because his poll numbers are waning. And there's no way. But it's not just Russ. It's not just the presidency they're worried about. They're worried about the House and the Senate. So anybody now that's riding Biden is worried about losing their seats in Congress.
Absolutely.
So this is why this is all coming about. It's not even about the presidency. It's about losing total control of the government, losing those seats, those Senate seats, those House seats. So this is what it's all about. That's why it's hip now for these 20 senators to come forth and say, look, man, maybe Biden needs to step aside. They only care about holding power. That's it. There's no other thing. They don't care about the American public. All they care about is holding power. And the American public is seeing that now. And that's why Donald Trump is polling so well.
Yep. And one last comment. Mama Teresa, she says, Obama has finally gave the word that it's time for him to go. I didn't catch that today.
I didn't see that. There was supposed to be some news coming out that that Obama and the minority speaker was going to have the minority speaker was going to have a conversation with Joe Biden, but that didn't hit the news stream as I was prepping for this, so I didn't say anything about that. But Hillary Clinton was caught on a hot mic earlier saying it's like trying to take the keys away from your grandfather. He doesn't want to give them up. So come on. But the funny thing is they act like this is new. This is some new revelation because of the debate. No, this guy's been falling upstairs since he got elected. So
absolutely,
this is nothing new. And Donald, look, like, hate, who cares about Donald Trump, whatever. This man has been right about every single thing he said. Damn it. And it's sad. It's sad. Look, would I like to have a younger person in there? I would love to have a younger person in there. But Donald Trump has done nothing against this country that I can fault him for, with the exception of the bump stock thing. No, I do fault him for that. He came right out and I nailed him for that as soon as he came out with that. So, and the NRA should have nailed him for it, but they didn't. I don't know, Dan. I don't know who's running the show. I have no idea who's running the show. And then Biden also said that his military advisor was the commander in chief.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I'm just reading chat.
Yeah. The clot shot.
And I don't know if it was the clot shot that ended up making him crazy, or if he's just too damn old and crazy. But the interesting thing is, regardless of if he does step down, he's got to worry about Hunter. Somebody's got to get him out of trouble yet. So someone's got to pardon him. So part of the deal, if he does step aside, is, hey, you better pardon my boy. And if that happens, then all hell's going to break loose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. He did push that clutch. He did push the shot. You're right, with Operation Warp Speed. So another thing that can't be. But look, anytime I'm not gonna lie. I did not take that shot. I didn't feel the need to. I ended up catching the vid and let it run its course. Baby girl ended up catching it, let it run its course. So contrary to popular belief and what Fauci would have you believe, the natural antibodies were just as effective as the vaccine. Oh, I'm gonna get gigged on YouTube for that.
Oh, that's okay. They can't be first, they can be next.
Exactly. Hey, Ray, good to see you over there on Facebook. You're probably hanging out over there by yourself. Don't forget, you need to get over to kick.com where is that? Do we have that banner? Let me see if I got a banner so we can get people. Anyway, go over to kick.com/Pete-Robertucci so you can catch the after show. And we are going to be doing starting a series tonight on the aftermaths of an EMP attack on the U.S. and why I decided to bring this forth this week as opposed to earlier. Because I know, look, I write about EMPs, I do all that stuff, but something really caught my attention. A friend of mine sent me something, and it made me dive into it a little bit further.
And, we had one late comment, and then we'll
go ahead, Russ.
Yeah. So we got one more comment, and then we'll pay some bills. How about that?
Sounds good to me, bud.
All right. So Susie, she said, did we hear about the NGO in North Carolina saying they're getting refugees Social Security cards?
Absolutely. So, and I said this on another podcast a while back because I had a buddy who works. Javi's brother works in Border Patrol, and he was telling me about what the illegal immigrants were getting as soon as they crossed the border. And I had mentioned this on another podcast, and they were like, "No, that's not happening." No, they do get a cell phone. They get a healthcare card. They get benefits. And actually, I'm not even going to say that right now, but yeah. Kelly's in the house. Madman Wayne's in the house. So he's leaving. Or Wayne's leaving. All right, let's pay some bills. Listen, here's what we're going to do. On the flip side of these bills, what we're going to do is we're going to kill the feed to Facebook and YouTube. And then we're going to primarily go on Kick. We're going to go through this, and then we're going to hit the after show. So let's nail that right now. Intermission.
I spent my first 15